Ezra Pound has always been one of my favourite poets. His political views were unbearably wicked, which he came to see at the end of his life. He regarded his anti-Semitism at the end of his life, when he'd lived his life, as an absurd social prejudice that somehow he had fallen prey to. His views on economics were based on a very cranky Englishman who never seemed to get anywhere, living in Italy under Mussolini and broadcasting the Italian state radio in World War II. Nearly got him executed. It was only the intervention of a very much more minor poet, E. Cummings, that his life was saved. His greatest achievement probably was in his earlier shorter poems, but the massive Cantos, which I think is something like 700 pages long, have always been, like Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, a very strange enigma. I think one difficulty is that they are very complex, they are very long, and some are completely unreadable because they contain Chinese ideograms, quotations from Latin and Greek without footnotes. I think there is a guide to the cantos, which is as long as the cantos are themselves. But what does shine through here and there, and sometimes for very considerable periods, is his massive lyrical gift to juxtapose images from 20th century art, from classical literature, from the literature of classical China and Japan. Where he bogs us down is when he becomes obsessed with economic theory. One interesting thing is that when you read different selections, different editors, apart from 2 or 3 of his most famous cantos, do choose a very different selection. Canto 2, to me, is one of his most fascinating cantos. I think it's impossible to actually comment on a canto while it's being read. I think the best thing with these poems is to listen to them, perhaps as though one was listening to a piece of music. After all, if you're listening to a piece of music, the meaning, in a sense, is the sound or the effect of the sound upon the listener. I think this is really the only way to appreciate Pound's cantos. Canto 2. Hang it all, Robert Browning. There can but be the one Sordello. But Sordello? And my Sordello? Lo sordels si fo di Mantovana, so shoe churned in the sea, seal sports in the spray-whited circles of cliff-wash, sleek head, daughter of Lear, eyes of Picasso, under the black fur hood, lithe daughter of ocean, and the wave runs in the beach groove. Eleanor, Elenaus, and Eleptolis, and poor old Homer, blind, blind as a bat. Ear, ear for the sea surge, murmur of old men's voices. Let her go back to the ships, back among Grecian faces, lest evil come on our own, evil and further evil, and a curse cursed on our children. Moves, Yes, she moves like a goddess, and has the face of a god, and the voice of Shirney's daughters, and doom goes with her in walking. Let her go back to the ships, back among Grecian voices, that, by the beach run, Tyro, twisted arms of the sea god, lithe sinews of water gripping her, cross-hold, and the blue-grey glass of the wave tents them, glare azure of water, cold welter, close cover, quiet, sun-tawny sand stretch, the gulls broad out their wings, nipping between the splay feathers, snipe come for their bath, bend out their wing joints, spread wet wings to the sea film, and by Skios, to the left of the Naxos passage, naviform rocks overgrown, algae cling to its edge. There is a wine-red glow in the shallows, a tin flash in the sun dazzle. The ship landed in Skios, men wanting spring water, and by the rock pool a young boy loggy with vine must. To Naxos? Yes, we'll take you to Naxos. Come along, lad, not that way. Aye, that way is Naxos. And I said, it's a straight ship. And an ex-convict out of Italy knocked me into the forestays. He was wanted for manslaughter in Tuscany. And the whole 20 against me, mad for a little slave money. And they took her out of Skios and off her course. And the boy came to again with the racket, and looked out over the bows, and to eastward, and to the Naxos passage. God slate them, God slate. Ship stuck fast in sea swirl, ivy upon the oars, King Pentheus, grapes with no seed but sea foam, ivy in scupper hole. I, Acoites, stood there, and the god stood by me, water cutting under the keel, sea break from stern forards, wake rushing off from the bow. And where was the gunwale? There now was vine trunk and tenthril where cordage had been, grape leaves on the rowlocks, heavy vine on the oak shafts, and out of nothing a breathing, hot breath on my ankles, beast like shadows in glass, a furred tail upon nothingness, lynx purr, and a heathery smell of beasts where tar smell had been, sniff and padfoot of beasts, eye glitter out of black air, the sky overshot, dry with no tempest, sniff and padfoot of beasts for brushing my knee skin, rustle of airy sheaths, dry forms in the ether, and the ship like a keel in shipyard, slung like an ox in smith's sling, ribs fast in the ways, grape cluster over pinrack, void aid, taking pelt. Lifeless air became sinewed, feline leisure of panthers, leopards sniffing the grape shoots by scupper hole, and the sea blue deep about us, green ruddy in shadows, and Lycius, from now Acoites my altars, fearing no bondage, fearing no cat of the wood, safe with my lynxes, feeding grapes to my leopards. Olibanum is my incest, the vines growing in my homage, the backswell now smooth in the rudder chains, black snout of a porpoise where lycabs had been, fish scales on the oarsman, and I worship. I have seen what I have seen. When they brought the boy, I said, he has a god in him, though I do not know which god, and they kicked me into the forestays. I have seen what I have seen, Medon's face like the face of a Dory, arms shrunk into fins, and you, Pentheus, had as well listen to Tiresias and to Cadmus, or your luck will go out of you. Fish scales over groin muscles, lynx purr amid sea, and of a later year, pale in the wine-red algae. If you will lean over the rock, the coral face under wave tinge, rose paleness under water shift, Eleutheria, fair Daphne of seaboards, the swimmer's arms turned to branches, who will say in what year, fleeing what band of Tritons, the smooth brow, seen and half seen, now ivory stillness, so shoe churned in the sea, so shoe also, using the long moon for a churn stick, lithe turning of water, sinews of Poseidon, black azure and hyaline glass wave over Tyro, close cover, unstillness, bright welter of wave chords, then quiet water, quiet in the buff sands, sea fowl stretching wing joints, splashing in rock hollows and sand hollows, in the glass wave runs by the half dune, glint of wave in the tide drips against sunlight, pallor of Hesperus, grey peak of wave, wave colour of grave's pulp, olive grey in the near, far smoke grey of the rock slide. Salmon wings of the fish hawk cast grey shadows in water. The tower, like a one-eyed great goose, cranes up out of the olive grove, and we have heard the fawns chiding Proteus in the smell of hay under the olive trees, and the frogs singing against the forms in the half-light. And I would also like to read Pound's Canto 45 with Usura. I never had, perhaps until recently, any very passionate ideas pro or anti-capitalism, but I think the experience of living in my early 70s and seeing the recession and the way the harshness with which capitalism works. I had, when I was younger, seen the harshness of Nazism, the harshness of communism, but now we too have seen the harshness of capitalism and how it treats the poor and the weak and the vulnerable. With usura hath no man a house of good stone, each block cut smooth and well-fitting, that Dane might cover their face. With usura hath no man a painted paradise on his church wall, harpes et luthes, or where virgin receiveth message, and halo projects from incision. With usura seeth no man Gonzaga his heirs and his concubines. No picture is made, nor to live with, but it is made to sell and sell quickly. With usura, sin against nature is thy bread, even more of stale rags is thy bread as dry paper. With no mountain wheat, no strong flour, with usura the line grows thick, with usura is no clear demarcation, and no man can find site for his dwelling. Stone cutter is kept from his stone, weaver is kept from his loom. With usura wool comes not to market, sheep bringeth no gain with usura. Usura is a murrain. Usura blunteth the needle in the maid's hand, and stoppeth the spinner's cunning. Pietro Lombardo came not by usura, Duccio came not by usura, nor Pier della Francesca, Zoanbellin not by usura, nor was La Calumnia painted. Came not by usura Angelico, came not Ambrogio Pridis, came no church of cut stone signed Adamo me fecit, not by usura sent Tropheme, not by usura sent Hilaire. Usura rusteth the chisel, it rusteth the craft and the craftsman, it gnawed the thread in the loom, none learned to weave gold in her pattern. Asia hath a canker by usura, cramoisies unbroidered, emerald findeth no memling, usura slayeth the child in the womb, it stayeth the young man's courting, it hath brought palsy to bed, lieth between the young bride and her bridegroom, contra natura, they have brought whores for Eleusis, corpses are set to banquet at behest of usura.